The MCC Insider program has resumed with a new build testing the Match Composer system, but it also has some new options for aiming that we can take a look at. This video is the third part on the topic. You might want to check out the last one, update and conclusion, if you feel you've missed something. So the two options we have now are sliders for aim acceleration and dead zones. Let's bring up the graphs we used last time, made by Eternal Dahaka. The red is the dead zone. The coordinates of the stick can be anywhere in this zone, and the game will just ignore it. This is so that when you release the stick, you stop turning. The blue zones are the horizontal and vertical dead zones. As long as the chords are in this top zone, the game will look up and will not turn left or right. This is why, when we did the spin test, the game would tend to follow cardinal directions. According to these graphs, Halo 2 Classic in the MCC has one of the largest cardinal dead zones, which you can really feel in-game. It feels like lowering the dead zone slider shrinks the blue zones as well as the red, which is welcome. These darkened zones around the edge are the acceleration zones. When the chords are in these zones, it doesn't matter how far tilted the stick is, the game will accelerate the rate at which you turn until it hits max speed. The benefit to this is that when you tap the stick, you want to turn quickly. You don't need the same level of accuracy as the middle of the stick. However, the Bungie games have these spikes on the diagonals, meaning that if you move the stick from half tilt up to half tilt right, you cross this zone and your aim shoots off in this direction, making for very unreliable aiming. In essence, the diagonal zones are much more sensitive than the rest of the stick. This phenomenon is carried over from the original Halo CE 2 and 3. They weren't introduced in the MCC. Halo 4 and 2 Anniversary are both unaffected by this, having properly implemented acceleration zones. This is why the old games feel wrong. Keep in mind, the maximum radius on the graphs is actually smaller than the maximum tilt distance of the stick. So while it may seem the diagonal acceleration zones are quite small, they are actually much closer to the center than they look in the graphs. Also, the graphs do not account for any acceleration zones in the verticals, hence why they cut off after the spikes. Eternal Dahaka explains that it was difficult to measure accurately, but that the vertical zones probably follow a similar path as the horizontal ones. Halo CE feels like it doesn't have any vertical acceleration whatsoever, but I can't be sure about the others. So, how do the new sliders affect the aim? Firstly, you still want some dead zone. I found I could halve it down to 10 and the stick would remain still when untouched. Not much more to say here, just play around with the setting, but leave yourself a little breathing room. Now, aim acceleration. This slider will vary the time it takes you to reach maximum turn rate as dictated by the sensitivity and the tilt distance. Sensitivity is the rate, acceleration is how soon you reach that rate. Tap the stick to one side. You start spinning, but it takes maybe a second to reach max speed. You can read more about this in a series of pages by someone called Strangevault. There's quite a lot to digest. This acceleration, as expected, only comes into play if the stick chords are in an acceleration zone. The green and blue areas all perform the same regardless of acceleration. If the stick is right at the edges, the game goes, "Oh, you're not aiming, you want to turn quickly. I'll help you with that." So there is a benefit to aim acceleration. It gives you high sensitivity at the edges for quick turns, and low sensitivity in the center for aiming. The problem is, as ever, with the acceleration zones in the diagonals. This zone intrudes well into your aiming area. The acceleration zone should be a perfect curve around the edge of the stick for uniform aiming, but instead it juts quite far into the center. The jump in speed is the aiming system going from aim mode to turn mode, because it thinks you want to look at something else. Take this footage of Halo 3 in the regular build of the MCC. Here I start spinning, gradually tilting the stick, and my turn rate increases uniformly along with it. I then reach the acceleration zone, and my rate of turn increases substantially to the maximum it can reach at this sensitivity. By moving the stick only a few millimeters, I can jump in and out of this zone. You can see how the speed immediately drops the moment I leave. This is okay, turning quickly horizontally, But the issue is you can hit this zone and go to warp speed in an instant if you cross a diagonal, and this messes up your aiming. So how does the Insider build perform with the acceleration slider? Essentially, aim acceleration is the sensitivity of the acceleration zones. At 10, you reach max speed almost immediately. At 1, there's still a jump, but much smaller, as long as you don't stay in the zone for long. However, it therefore takes much longer for you to spin 180 degrees. In Halo CE, setting 1 seems to almost turn off acceleration altogether, which may seem nice, but now it takes a few ice ages to turn around. You can instead up the sensitivity to 9 or 10, but you then lose a lot of fine aiming control. At this stage, and remember I can only test for brief stints during matches, I've set the acceleration in 2 and 3 to 1, but in CE I've set it to 2. I'm still getting jumps in aiming from the diagonals, but at least it's a little more manageable. I've not yet been able to get a match with 4, but as the diagonals are not an issue, you could well leave it at the default 5 if it doesn't feel off to you. What about 2 Anniversary? It uses the same aiming system as 4, but its settings are tied to Halo 2 Classic, and I can't find a setting that works for both. If nothing else, Halo 2 Anniversary needs its own aim acceleration, sensitivity, and dead zone sliders separate from Halo 2 Classic. To summarise, the new sliders are a very welcome addition, but they do not address the core issue, being the acceleration zones in the diagonals. The acceleration slider allows us to turn the effect down, but it not only doesn't get rid of the issue, it's at the detriment to the actual point of aim acceleration. These spikes at the diagonals are the root of the issue, and while the new sliders certainly help, it doesn't solve it. I don't know why the acceleration zones spike inward like this when they should follow the curve of the circle, as you can see here with a graph of Halo 5. But they are there, and they shouldn't be. The question is, how easy is it to remove them? By the way, I've had this build downloaded and ready to go for 4 days ahead of the play sessions. Please 343, if you're going to change the control system, allow us to test it out offline. With only the matchmaking portion of the build available, I've had to wait for the official test weekend to be able to test these settings. Meanwhile, everyone else has had to put up with me spending half of each match in the menu or spinning around. Please keep at least one offline mode available in the Insider builds, especially when there are new control options. I matched with Postums about 4 times. You must have been thinking, who's this numpty just spinning around in circles? So, sorry to everyone who matched with me and thought I was idle. Thank you as always to 343 for your ongoing efforts with the MCC. I can't wait to see the match composer hit the public build. If you think the conclusion of this video is worth pursuing, please share it to 343 so they can look into it. My name is Stefan. Thank you for watching.